I don't know if we're recording.
It's recording now. Got it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our budget and flag of the United States of America and to the Republic
for which it
with it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Ms. Callahan, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mrs. Johnson.
Yes, here.
Or to publish it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Mrs. Johnson said she was here.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Weisberg,
I'm here.
Ms. Bays,
Present.
Ms. Brooks.
Here.
Ms. Epstein,
Here.
Ms. Gilliar,
Here.
Mr. Greenstein.
Don't see him, but somebody's, nope, I don't see him.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. We have an agenda for today of some things sort of future looking that I'd like to go through, but Ms. Callahan, before we start that, just given the fact that we haven't had the budget vote, it would be terrific to have a quick overview of the budget that's being presented for the community. So do you think we could start with just a little bit of an overview for the many, many people who maybe didn't see one of the other 9 presentations we've done?
Well, this, excuse me, this one will be very brief. If you would like more, just let me know. After many weeks of discussion among the board, the superintendent, the central administration, the building level administrators, the final budget adopted by the Board of Education has a 2.48% increase in the budget. That is mainly for health insurance, pension costs, and the negotiated agreements between the Board of Education and all of our bargaining units. There are no major program changes in this budget whatsoever. We are trying to go back to what was in effect in 1920. The actual tax levy impact for the community is 2.067%. That includes the board taking $2 million out of their savings account to help offset the tax levy. The vote date itself is May 18th from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. There is a special piece of legislation that was adopted this year relative to COVID. If people are concerned about social distancing or being in a large area with many people, they may apply for an absentee ballot, and the area they would check is that of illness, and then the ballot would be sent to the individual who then has to return it to the district. I had a voter ask me the other day how long that process takes. I responded that I cannot guarantee because I am depending on the US mail unless it is done in person. So I would say you must allow at least 10 to 14 days for an application to be mailed to you, for you to return it, for us to then send you a ballot, and for you to return that ballot to us. That is the very brief version of the budget. Would you care for anything in more depth at this point?
That's fine, Mary. I would just like to add at this point, the point that I have been making at all of these meetings as we go round and round and hit all of the groups that we've hit with a budget presentation. Front page news every other day. Newsday clearly is about the additional aid to school districts, foundation aid, and federal money. I just wanted to point out that some of the numbers that people have seen out there are not quite as accurate as far as a more when we talk about what we counted in within our budget. So according to Mrs. Callahan, who has always been the guru for all of these numbers, we are getting about an additional $1.5 million in aid from the state, more than we counted on when we developed this budget. As Ms. Callahan just mentioned, we took $2 million out of our reserve accounts. So because that number is a very high number for us to have taken out of reserves, and a number that we are not really comfortable with, it's not good for the long-term health of the district to continue to do that, but clearly we needed to ensure that we maintained programming. And we have decided not to reopen the budget and not to consider this $1.5 million. This money will, if it all comes, because we all know also, those of us who have paid attention to the budget process for many, many years know that the number that we look at April of 2020 is not always the number that we see April of 2021 or June of 2021, when the auditors come and look at what our state aid number is. It's almost never in my time on the board been the number that the state said it was going to be the year before. So because of that, and higher sometimes, lower sometimes, that does not always mean it's less money. Sometimes it's more, but it's an estimate. It's not a set in stone number. And so because it's an estimate and not a set in stone number, this money will allow us to refund some of the funds we've taken out of reserves this year and this school year, 2020, 2021, as well as the money that we allocated from 2021, 2022. And it will ensure the future financial health of the school district. So that's where that money has gone. And that's a very brief explanation. And then we have the other piece of the puzzle, which is the federal CARES money, or I don't know, there's another name for it now, but the federal money that's supposed to be coming down to the district. And that money, according to Ms. Callahan, we are clear, cannot be part of our regularly budgeted and regular programming that we typically offer. That money is supposed to be used moving forward to ameliorate some of the issues that were created by COVID, some of the educational issues, the gaps in education, and some other things that we're seeing. And so as that money comes throughout, now and going forward, and I believe it had to be used within 3 years, there's a whole bunch of rules about how it has to be used, but our administration is currently looking and will continue to look at the types of programs that fit the bill as far as what the federal government says that the school district can use it for, and also best serve our students. So those are the two pieces of the puzzle I think that we've been asked about the most as board members. I think everybody would shake their head and agree that community members are asking us about these particular things. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands yet again, there is not this windfall of money, and we are appreciative that the state is moving in the right direction as far as funding foundation aid more fully. But in my opinion, and perhaps the opinion of some others sitting here, we need to wait and see, and we need to sort of make sure that we sort of slow and steady, because that slow and steady will win the race. So will be the best for our students and the best for our school district. And we look forward to, as a board, I think Dr. Hines and his team coming to us over the next months and the next year with the programs that we will be able to offer to help offset some of the problems that were created by COVID. So that will actually be, more fun work than we've been doing now, that we all look forward to. I see Ms. Johnson has a hand up, so let's move to questions.
Mary, thank you, Beth. That was a very comprehensive analysis of those issues. Mary, is the full $1.5 million, should we get $1.5 million or something close to it, is that all going into unrestricted? Is that the current plan, to go into the unrestricted fund balance?
It doesn't go into fund. The additional 1.5 will flow to fund balance. It will not flow as of June 30th this year. It will flow as of June 30th next year, because this is an estimate for the next fiscal year for the budget on which we are voting. So yes, it will go to fund balance. Short answer to your question. Longer answer is you will not see it in the numbers this year. You will see it in the numbers next year.
And Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that's left at the end of the year goes automatically into fund balance, the unrestricted. And then the district, the board would have the opportunity to move it into restricted accounts, should we see the need.
Absolutely, yes. You do that by resolution every year
Okay.
at a public meeting.
So it would be, the 1.5 million plus anything that was underspent in the budget, that's for those new to the budget process and the way the school district works, we create a budget. We cannot spend a penny more than that budget says unless there's some emergency situation that allows us to spend that money, i.e. COVID, or one year we had a roof situation, but otherwise we're only allowed to spend what we have budgeted. We can, however, underspend, or we can end up with more money coming in than we had thought. But even when more money comes in than we had budgeted as, incoming money, we still can't spend that money. We can only spend the money that we said we were going to spend. Mary, if I say anything wrong, please correct me, but we can only spend the money that we said we were going to spend. So any additional funds that come in, because our pilots are estimates, there are many, many things we have as estimates. Anything additional that comes in, we cannot spend. We can only spend the budgeted money. And if we underspend what comes in, everything that's left over at the end of the fiscal year, which for the school district is June 30th every year, automatically goes into our reserve accounts, correct?
Absolutely correct. You have an A.
Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. I've been learning. I'm going to miss my many, many years of learning from you, but I like to think we were a good team in this time.
Yes,
sure.
definitely. Definitely.
Anybody else have anything that they would like to ask or like to make sure is said in this public meeting before our budget vote comes up? It's an opportunity to make sure that you all have the points you think are important out there in public. So if anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand so that I can call on you. No? Wow. What a quiet group. This is not usually such a quiet group of people, but thank you. That means Mary's doing a great job. So we will move on. Mary, what was the first item? Because I don't have it open on another screen.
A review of the facilities rentals. And then the next one after that is facilities condition survey. And the last item is bond construction status. So I guess you can go in any order you choose.
You know what? Can we move to the bond facility because Jim has invited Justin here? Can we move on to the bond review first so that we can let Justin go? I assume, Jim, that's why Justin is here. And does that work for you guys? Is that better if we do that?
Yeah, that would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's move on to that first.
And if I could just jump for a second and say, I did prepare and give to the superintendent's office an item for the packet relative to daily. Just in case Justin talks about daily, I wanted you to know it was also on the way in writing.
Fantastic. Jim, I'm going to throw this over to you and Justin and, take it as you see fit.
Okay. Well, give a quick rundown of where we're at with the current bond projects and what's coming out to bid and what's in the design phase right now. So we're in the process of replacing the windows at Weber. That will continue probably through the summer. We had, unfortunately, an issue with the original cupola contractor who is non-existent and disappeared. We've made arrangements with the general contractor that did the addition at Weber that will take over the work and install the cupola. They need 5 working days to do that. So we're going to schedule that for Monday, June 28th, because we're going to have to work from the front bus loop. So the cupola and windows will continue at Weber through the summer and wrap up. We started Schreiber High School. We started the technology edition. We tried to get some of them noisy demo and tree removal done over the spring break. Shop drawings for the foundations were returned last week, so we should be starting them within the next week or two. And then the front cafeteria edition will start June 28th after school is over. I've already spoken with the principals. We've made arrangements to have an alternate entrance since the main entrance will be shut down at the school. through the summer and through the 21-22 school year while we do the addition. We're also tackling the cafeteria serving line renovation this year. The district was kind enough to make some arrangements to allow the contractors to get in there at night starting the 18th, so we can get a jump start on the disconnects and demo. It's a lot of work to accomplish from June 28th to August 31st, but we have a very good game plan, and we've got a bunch of good contractors on this project, so I'm confident we'll be able to get it done and do the serving line. The high school additions will run and be ready for September of 2022. So those are the current projects. We have Daly's elementary school addition that's going out for bid next Friday. This is a rebid because the project originally, the first bid was over budget. We made some design changes, but unfortunately, construction costs are going up, exponentially at this point. Steel, lumber. So we're probably, based on my latest estimates, still going to be over budget, but we'll see where the numbers come in. We have some flexibility in the way the bid is set up with alternates to allow us some flexibility in picking and choosing what we can and cannot do to fit it under the budget. And then the last two additions are for Salem and Sousa. We just had a few early design meetings with the principals. BBS is working on the drawings with the target of getting them up to SED for review sometime late fall, just before the Christmas break, with the intent of going out to bid in the spring of 2022 for those projects, and then starting the summer of 2022.
Thank you, Justin. And
You're welcome.
if you could just, you or Jim, because we haven't really discussed bond and construction, talk about how the opening for the Weber addition went, because that I don't think we've discussed that publicly either.
Do you want me to say something?
Sure.
Okay, it went well. It was a very good project. Couple of hiccups in the beginning. Again, we wound up with a very good contractor there. And that's why we're using them to finish the job of the other person that disappeared. And I just want to add a little something to that. The cupola project, there was all the preliminary work was done for the cupola. It's just that it's down to the installation, and it's a shame, but that he's going to have a scar on his work going forward for any other bidding. So this company, they were very good with the other stuff they did. So just to clear that, they did some, they did the chimney rebuilding, and they did an excellent job with that. They just failed at the cupola, so it was just unfortunate. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
And Jim, there's no additional cost to the district for this cupola?
No,
change?
no, it's money that's still owed to the contractor that we were able to use, and
Okay.
liquidated damages that we have in our contract that we're still gonna have. So we should be we're in very good shape with that.
We were in touch with our attorney all along the process to make sure that we didn't miss anything or jeopardize the district in any way.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. I so appreciate as a board member knowing that we are in such good hands and that you guys are always on top of these things and always looking out for our best interests. So we appreciate it. I also just wanted to mention for any community members who haven't tuned in, I think this is probably the first time or maybe the second that we've had Justin join us on a virtual meeting, and we've had more people tuning into these meetings. Justin Daddio is the representative for our construction management team that is managing the bond construction, school construction, I think Justin is the name of it.
Yeah, school construction consultants. Yes.
School construction consultants. So he's a contracted employee, a contractor for the district, not an employee with the district. So I just wanted to be clear as to who Justin is and why he is speaking about the bond work. And I will move on to Deborah, who has a question.
Thank you. Let me figure out how to lower my hand. Thank you for the update. I've been waiting with great anticipation to hear all about the construction equipment at Schreiber. Excited for the kids who will get the benefit of the new construction in September of 22, and I hope that comes to pass. In the meantime, we're going to have about 1,600 kids at Schreiber during the 21-22 school year. How will the especially if this pandemic is still going on in whatever shape or form, has there been any view toward how these kids will be accommodated if there is any part of the facility that is still under construction that prevents them from eating in the cafeteria? I don't know what the stages are. So will the cafeteria be ready to receive kids in September of 21? Will there be an alternate staging area for food? How will we do that, especially if social distancing is still necessary when they eat?
The cafeteria has to be done by August 31st. The big part of that, the food service equipment, all the new food service equipment, that was released to production in April, or first week in April. That's about a 12-week lead time. So that'll give us the food service equipment in July. That was the main variable that concerns me because you have no control over the suppliers. The contractors are aware of the deadlines and will have to do what's necessary, double shifts, weekends. I've made it very clear that this cafeteria has to be done by August 31st. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it because there is no swing space. So whatever these contractors have to do, they will do it to make sure that it is done by August 31st.
And just in the other parts of the addition, do they affect any learning spaces?
No, they do not. The cafeteria addition will be able to build a temporary wall along that window that faces out towards the main entrance. So they'll be able to continue working on the new addition while the cafeteria will still have the same amount of seating available for the students.
So
Existing
all
cafeteria.
current existing space will be available to all of our students at Schreiber by September, first day of school in September.
Yes. And then the new addition spaces will be ready for September of 2022.
Thank you. Deborah, does that help?
I have a follow-up question to that, and then I had a second question. So there's going to be a wall. So does that mean that one area of fresh air ventilation is going to be cut off?
Well, I don't know if those windows are operable. I'd have to double check. I don't remember off the top of my head. But yes, that window wall would be inaccessible.
Okay, so I guess that's something that we'll have to keep in mind if there are ventilation issues. Just throwing it out there. I don't know. I'm just asking the question. My next question was with regard to the elementary schools that will be, I guess, eventually doing their construction. Will any of that overlap with the roof work that is being done, or is that going to be separate and apart?
I'm not sure about the roof work. I think, and I'll defer to Jim, that might be something that's capital related and not part of the bond. Am I correct in that, Jim?
Yeah, just.
I mean, will
specific,
disturb.
the roof work, any
Will
roof.
disturb.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify. Will it disturb any of the roof work? In other words, will it impact any of the work that's been done, require the work to be done over again, or are these sections sacrosanct and separate and apart? We don't have to worry about anything happening to them.
No, you're saying roofs that are already in place with new construction? Is that what you mean? No, anything that does get altered or is put back correctly. Any other roof work that's being done, there is no interchange right now. Sousa will be done. The last part of Sousa will be done before construction starts there. And any subsequent work that goes forward will be coordinated.
Jim, doesn't the work on the Salem roof, that large portion is in the area where the new classroom will be, that will be considered as part of the bid specification for the contractors, that they have to make that connection.
Right, correct. That, and again, that's what I meant, future work, when Salem is ready to be constructed. Hopefully we'll have that new section on and it would be done the same, it'll be tied in the same coordination with two different architects, but the coordination will definitely be there. That was done. That was communicated to them early on when we got the second architect, that the coordination would always take place when we're touching their work. So that's definitely something on everyone's mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Justin. Thank you,
Okay.
Mary.
Thank you. I'm going to excuse myself. I just have a few phone calls to make. Thank
Please
you,
go
everyone.
ahead. And just a quick point. It's so nice to know that these staff members and that Mary and that Jim and you guys just always have thought of everything before we can even ask the questions. So we really appreciate I really, truly appreciate for those people who hadn't been paying attention years prior. Jim has just done an excellent job at maintaining our facilities and making sure that, you know, he thinks ahead and thinks about the future of the district and not just solving today's problems. And I think we had a little bit of that in the past. And so, Jim, thank you very much for all of your work there. Mary, let's move on to, while we still have Jim, and then we can let him go. Let's move on to the facilities condition report and where we're at with our future projects that we know we need to start thinking about.
Well, I might just summarize what Jim and I had worked on during the budget process as our proposed plan for the next 4 years. And then I'll let Jim talk about the voluminous document that was uploaded and what the status of that document is.
Can I just
So-
interrupt you, Mary? I'm sorry. Where was it uploaded? Because I don't think we have it, or I can't find it.
Ruth?
So where was it
It was
uploaded?
uploaded to the budget and facilities
No,
On 4 docs, it was uploaded.
agenda.
nope.
I don't see it on the agenda for today. Would it be under something different?
It's up there. If you look to the side, you'll see it. Should be active.
I can't find it either. I don't know. So does that get it?
I don't know, does
Anybody else
anyone
find
have
it?
it? I don't see it, but I
Maybe
could,
there's a setting that prevents it from being viewed that sometimes happens. I don't see it either.
Well, we have John Johnert here on the line. Maybe he could explain or take a look while we're talking to see what.
Well, I don't think he can do board docs. No, it's not.
Well, let me go through what Jim and I had talked about, and I would imagine Jim has at least had a cursory look at this report. Just keep in mind when he talks about it that it's over 6 years old and it's not going to be revised for another year or two because the state changed their regulations relative to the 5-year plan. So next year, with the intent of thinking the board may want to keep the same number in the transfer to capital line, which is $2,023,088. We're suggesting that the track be recoded and the lanes be restriped, that the 5 existing tennis courts have the asphalt redone with the nets replaced. The extent to that refurbishment would certainly depend on the exact estimate that comes in for the tennis courts. But we did a budget.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I found it on board docs. You have to just go under meetings. It's under a separate date. It's under Wednesday, April 28th. You should all find it if you go to meetings because I just did. So go back to meetings, get out of this one, and there's a separate category for that. And now that I've said that, Mary, you can continue.
Sure.
While looking.
And then we did add back in a certain dollar amount for asbestos replacement and additional roof sections at the high school because, as you will remember, we are replacing 6 sections out of 15 this year that need to be updated. So we will try to get as many more roof sections done as possible. So that would come to $2,023,000. The year after that, we're hoping to do half of the classroom windows at Daly. We're trying to do the fire alarm system at Guggenheim. More roof work, this time at Daly, the asbestos abatement, and a fire alarm system at Sousa as well. If the board chooses at that time to follow that particular proposed plan, that's about $2,442,000. Keep in mind that these numbers will continue to go up as time goes by. So they're really just very rough estimates. And then in 24-25, the hope was to continue with the Daly elementary windows, finish those, and to do work at the Montfort parking lot. And beyond that, we didn't list anything else, and that's about $1.5 million. So it's a very rough estimate. It's a proposal of what Jim thinks is the most in need. But again, now if you want, Jim will talk to you about the specific building level condition survey.
Emily, do you have a question before Jim moves on?
Yeah, I actually just want to know if Mary's going to send that, because I started to write down what she was saying and then I went looking for the facilities report and now I've lost. So is it possible, Mary, if you could just send that to the board, what you put down as the
Yes, I just,
proposal, so that we can have that?
See if it can, maybe it can be thrown into today's packet.
yes.
Thank you. That was my only question, because
Okay,
I
your hand's still
stopped
up.
writing. I'm going to lower it.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, as Mary mentioned, that the last facility building condition survey was done 2015, 16, and that's done every 5 years, supposed to be. The state made a rule where they were to do it by region, and this is the first year by region and need. So our next scheduled building condition survey isn't going to happen until 2023 school year. That's when we're scheduled. In the interim, we do a smaller inspection by our code enforcement official who comes and just does a smaller type inspection. That's an annual inspection. So what I wanted to say about this is at the time of our last building condition survey, we had BBS do that for us. At that time, we had hired a new architect to do capital projects, and that's John Grillo. So what I am suggesting that we do is, because a lot of things have been done in that plan that are not taken out yet, so they're not erased, they're still in there. So there were quite a few items in there that are not there. So the plan needs to be brought up to date. But what I suggest we do next year is get John Grillo on board and have him conduct his own building condition survey with me, obviously, to not only bring this up to date, but get him familiar with the district and our needs. He may agree 100% with what I'm planning, but we may find other things, because it's been a couple of years that we did a comprehensive walkthrough. So these are the things, but the roofs don't go away. Those are something that are always at the forefront. So if we continue to move forward with the roofs, we will be in a position where we can start taking care of all of the other items on the building condition survey in the future. Is there any other questions with that? Specific questions, or how you want to? I mean, that's my advice at this time.
Okay. Does anybody else have any? I have a couple, but does anybody else have anything that they want to? Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. I just have a couple quick questions. So Jim, just for my own edification, this annual survey, like the little annual inspection that you do, it touches on so many points, right? That are probably coming from the facilities condition survey, but just on a much smaller scale.
It's called a structural survey.
Okay.
So it's not as comprehensive as the building condition survey. So years ago, we used to have to do both. We used to have to do a annual structural, and then the 5th year you do a building condition survey. They did away with the annual surveys about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But now that they went back to region, they re-implemented that. So while we're waiting for the building condition survey to come up on our queue, we are doing these structural surveys. So again, it's a smaller survey just to make sure there's nothing sticking out really that, blatantly. And that's the reason, that's how they fill in the gap.
Okay, and then just so, again, I'm understanding what you're suggesting is the documents that have been uploaded from the current condition survey, some of the work on those documents has been completed, but not edified on those documents.
Correct.
And so when are you thinking to do this for John Gorillo to come in and conduct like this survey and kind of give an estimate and a little run? You said next year, so like you're thinking in the beginning of the fall next year?
Well, we have till the end of 2023 to have a new building condition survey. So between now and then, we can have that done. So it would have to be done no matter what. So it would be smarter to get him in a little earlier because he's not as familiar with the district as our current architect that's been here. So I would say sometime in the early part of late part of 2022, I should say, or mid 2022.
And you're bringing him, so you're bringing him not in addition to the fact that we have to do our survey. It's just to get him prepared.
Start the process.
Start
yes.
the process. Okay, I
In
misunderstood.
other words, we don't want to wait too long because he's not as familiar. So we'd want to give him a little more time to conduct this and also try to beat the other school districts that have to do this as well. So it gives it a little more time. So we make sure we have a good plan.
Mhm.
I
Okay, thank
think
you.
there's also a cost associated with this 5-year plan. What would you kind of estimate that to be, Jim? Because as I recall, it's not inexpensive at all. We're in the thousands, right?
It is.
We
And
say
again,
30 and 50.
I did not get a cost from John yet, but I will do that very soon.
Right, I
And
just
I'm
want the
gonna-
board to understand
It's
that.
going to be comprehensive, yes. It's not a small cost. It's up there, upwards.
Thank you. Emily?
Thanks. I was just wondering if there's a way that we can, with this report not being updated, is there also, I'm giving you like maybe a list that can be sent to us that says, a comprehensive list of all the work that has been done that is not reflected in this report, just so that we can have a comparison for our sake, if that's possible. I mean, just a running list, like, that it's been completed.
I'll do it by building. Sure.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Deborah?
How are the bathrooms in the,
You muted yourself halfway through the question, Deborah.
thank you. What is the state of the bathrooms in the various buildings? Are they in decent shape? Because none of them are on any of this 3 or 5 year plan. So are we good to go for the bathrooms in the 8 buildings?
The bond covered a lot of bathrooms, a lot of bathroom renovation. There's been a lot done in Weber. There's been a lot. Schreiber's just about to start because with the cafeteria project, there are bathroom renovations. I don't remember the exact amount, but it's a good amount. Guggenheim had theirs done. So there are, every building had some attached to a project. So to answer your question, Weber is good now, and we're getting better. So as the bond is completed, it'll be a lot better than it was before the bond. And again, there will be a couple here and there, but we're in good shape with that. Some of the real antiques are starting to go away, put it that way.
Thank you.
And I am sure you're grateful for that, Jim.
Yes.
I know that's a source of constant stress for you. Does anybody else have any other questions on this? No? Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to the last item, which I put on really for my own edification, and I'm assuming as I bring this up, the rest of the board would have the same questions. We stopped renting our facilities during COVID, and I believe we started again. At least I see students playing outside on the fields. So I just wanted to see where we're at with our facilities rentals and what our plan, or have a discussion about what our plan should be moving forward, so that you know, we can sort of plan, because I know this is a budget line item, and we've had a loss of revenue because of it. And so as we move forward, I want to make sure, first of all, that we are moving forward as we move forward with everything as far as COVID goes. And that the other piece is that as we move forward, and just to put this on everybody's radar, should we be considering, is there any additional costs this, you know, if we start renting facilities again, that we should consider as we move into reorg in July and adopt a facilities rental fee structure? I just want to make sure it's on everybody's radar that if we have additional costs because of additional cleaning or staffing or other things that we deem necessary, that we are covering ourselves for those costs. So Mary or Jim, whoever wants to start.
I have a list of, yes, we are, to get right to it, we are renting our fields. We've been for a while, and do you want a list of who's who, or just, okay, so I'll just say we have Sousa, Guggenheim, Manhaven, Salem, and Daly, and Whitney Field are being used, just like they've always been. We've been utilizing them the same way.
But we have not gone to indoor
No.
facility rental yet. So I think that's probably the bigger question. I'm glad to hear that we're doing the fields, because clearly I think we all understand outdoor spaces, very different, very safe, and something that doesn't really incur concern for anybody here on the board. But I think moving to the indoor facilities rentals, I'm assuming that we have groups that are approaching us, Mary, about using our facilities again. The first one that comes to mind is probably Outlast. That's probably looking to move forward, not Outlast, that whatever they call themselves.
Washington Children's Center is hoping to
camp.
a space in September, as is the JCC.
Okay.
And those are both indoor programs using multiple spaces within the building. And as of today, anytime I've been in touch or they have contacted me, I have told them no decision has been made. We're looking to see how our all-in works. If we don't see that there's much spread of the virus, that would be a good point. That would send us in the direction of the superintendent and the principals deciding whether that can happen. Obviously, they're anxious to know. We do have a summer camp at Manor Haven this year. Jim, I don't know if they are using any indoor spaces.
I do not believe they are, and I haven't had I haven't seen the final product yet, but I don't believe they are.
No restroom facilities or anything that they're asking for access to.
We're gonna have to allow that.
Right.
At Manor Haven, at the end of one of the corridors, there are restrooms near that all-purpose room, Jim, in those modular, they're not really modular, I guess you'd call them modular class.
The new construction, the new wing.
All constructed back in 2002 or 2003, but there are restrooms back there right near the doors.
Okay.
Yes, and there's also brand new ones closer to the outside in the new addition at Manhaven as well. soon as you
Right.
walk in the door, they're right there.
I mean, that's obviously less of a concern for us because we won't have our students in the building at that point. So I just want to ensure that when we're doing this, we're reflecting our costs. So if we have additional costs, if we feel additional cleaning or additional staffing is going to be necessary for these things, I think everybody on the board would like to ensure that we're taking those into account as we move forward. And obviously, as I ask this question, I'm asking because clearly we're going to need a decision for both the JCC and the Children's Center for the fall soon, because parents are going to need to plan as to whether or not this is childcare that's going to be available for their children. Maybe this is a question more for Dr. Hines. Do we have a timeline on when we will be able to, as a board, have this conversation and make these decisions?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. We've been speaking about this in district office for quite some time. As Mary stated earlier, we want to wait to see what it looks like at both Weber and Schreiber so we can get a good gauge on how things are proceeding. But I would say within the next few weeks, we can make a recommendation to the board.
Thank you. Emily?
Thanks, Beth. That was actually my question, by when is the decision needed, but I'm confused though. This is using the elementary schools, right? Are they asking to use the Weber and Schreiber, or using the elementary schools? Isn't
The elementary schools, but the reference was made to the high school and middle school students coming back, just the all-in idea. Let's see if everybody remains healthy, if we're going in the right direction.
And I'm just saying I mentioned Weber and Schreiber because other organizations will want to use our facilities as well. So that was the reason for the reference.
And we are currently planning on a BOCES summer school, an academic program, which will have students in the buildings unless things go terribly wrong in the next 6 weeks.
Thank you, Mary.
right? So my point, exactly. So I just kind of want to say that if we have had our elementary school students in the building for the entire time since October, and if that hasn't really posed an issue, which we know it hasn't, then I don't know how that would help stop us from making this decision, I guess, sooner than later. The other thing that I did want to bring up, and I think Beth kind of mentioned, we do have the summer camp that is running. So this is Port Day Camp, right? This is what used to be at last, correct, Mary? That when we stopped running at last, we gave it to the Port Washington Children's Center. Can you give us some history? Because we have recently been asked about at last. So being that you're our historian, it would be great for you to give us that before you leave us.
Right. Before we move on from that, though, I just want let's just let Dr. Hines answer why he believes waiting to make this decision is prudent, because I just think you asked him that question first. So let's just let him answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that are interconnected. I know we spoke about this earlier in this meeting as far as the federal funds and what that means, because we will have summer programs as well in all three levels, both at Schreiber, Weber, and the elementary. So we just felt it was prudent just to wait another 2 more weeks, have a little more information, and then we can make that recommendation to the board.
So we can make sure that this is on an agenda for future budget, for the next budget and facilities meeting, so that we can have a recommendation from this work session to the board.
Right, which actually works for us, right? Because our next budget meeting is sometime early May, right?
Correct. We'll
Yeah.
that'll be fine. And before we move on to, because it is that the At Last versus Children's Center conversation is a good one, but before we move from this, have we had a request, because one of our larger renters that is a source of income for us is the Japanese school that rents Weber. Have they asked to come back?
Yes.
No, I think Jim's face is gone, but
They
No.
have asked to come back. That's good.
No, I'm here. I was just chewing. I was
That's okay.
eating an orange.
Good for you. Nice, healthy food, Jim.
Okay. Yes, they have been asking. Matter of fact, quite regularly. And
But listen, I just want to make sure that, there was always in the back of my head this concern that people who may have moved to a virtual platform are going to stay virtual because, and that would be a loss of revenue for us. So just for this committee's edification, it's good to know that as soon as we're ready to have them back, they're ready to come back. Mike, why don't you go ahead and then we can move on to Emily's question.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Real quick, I just want the board to know that we understand how important this is on two fronts. I mean, the health and safety of our students, having them come back over the summer, having those programs certainly at the beginning of the year, the sooner the better for our parents, so they know. And then there's the health and safety of it all. So it's in the forefront of our minds, and we'll have that information very, very soon.
Thanks, Dr. Hines. And now, Mary, do you want to give the quick history for everybody who might not be aware of how the summer program here has evolved?
The summer program evolved during 1 year of budget development, and I actually started looking for the date recently, but I haven't found it yet. Based simply on memory, I would say it was probably maybe 15 years ago, though. That while it was a revenue source, it was also a budget item on the expenditure side. And there was a particular year in which the then superintendent needed more staffing. And a decision was made to take out the program because we felt that there was a community group that was willing to take it on, and students therefore would not lose the benefit, but we would be able to then adjust the budget to add the necessary staffing.
Emily, do you have any?
No, I just wanted to make sure that, but so last year it didn't run, right? Port Day Camp, it did not run last year due to COVID. So, but this year they are running, and it does serve, I guess, the same population that would have been served under at last. I remember these conversations. I also don't remember the date because, so I think I must have been an HSA president or something at that point where the discussions were being had. So I just wanted to, again, just try to understand if it's, I remember the discussion that it wasn't a cost benefit for the district and we were able to basically, give it to another community organization, but I just was wanting to get the details. So I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Just as an aside relative to the summer school, this summer program at Manor Haven, the federal government is still providing free meals and will do that through the whole 21-22 school year as well. And so we are moving the bus that distributes the food up to Manor Haven, one of the two locations. So it will be convenient for many of those children participating in that program.
Thank you, Mary. That's a great forethought on that one. Does anybody else have any further questions, especially people who may not have actually lived here during all of this, unlike the three of us who I know for a fact did. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask while we still have Mary here? Sad, sob. No. Does anybody have any other questions on anything related to any of the agenda for this meeting before we move on to the public? Go ahead, Julie.
I just want to circle back to the bond for a second. Just a quick question. Where do we stand financially with the bond? Are we on track, on target? Are we looking that we may potentially be going over? Can you give us some insight on that, please?
We can't go over, Julie. There's no allowed going over.
We are on track. I think at this point, we might be about $30,000 over instead of under. But when I did hear about those excessive costs for steel and lumber, I wanted the board to have forewarning before the May 7th bid opening, because then if it is over budget, there will be a decision that has to be made because you still, as Jim mentioned and Justin, you have one classroom that's in the design phase at Salem, one classroom that's in the design phase at Sousa. There's also air conditioning units that still need to be placed in several of the buildings. I don't recall exactly which ones at the moment, but I think about 3 of the 5 elementaries still may need their air conditioning. The auditorium at Sousa is supposed to be renovated, not a complete renovation like the high school and middle school, but a partial renovation with new curtains and some replacement seating. And there were other not so exciting items that Jim really had on the list that went to the bones of the building. So the question will be, do we put all our money in daily if that's necessary, and then consider what may happen in the future for the balance of those projects? Or do we move forward with those other projects, hoping that those estimates come in as budgeted, and that eventually things will balance out in the construction world, and that the costs for daily will come down further? But we don't know that till May 7th. So that was just something for you to start thinking about.
Thanks, Mary. I saw a news report that a 10 by 10 deck that would have cost, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $800 in lumber to build this time last year is now somewhere around $3,000 in lumber. So that's a more than 3-fold increase in materials costs that I think nobody really could foresee. So that's not your typical, incremental increase for inflation. That's a tremendous change. So something important to note. Does anybody else have anything? No? Okay. We don't have any attendees, so I don't need to go to the public because there is nobody on the meeting to ask a question. So being that everybody has had their questions answered, I thank you guys both for giving us all of this information. I know we went through the 4 months of nothing but budget, and it's time to move on to future planning, which is what this meeting was all about. So I thank you for changing gears and moving forward with us. And we look forward to our next meeting, and we will probably be continuing most of these conversations. Thank you very much.
When is our next meeting again?
We don't have a date yet.
We didn't pick a date yet, but sometime
No.
early May, no?
Sometime in May. I wouldn't necessarily say early May, but sometimes in May. If
Okay.
we need to have one sooner, we can have one sooner.
Okay, all right.
We've been going back and forth for a date. I think we were trying for after the election, but if it looks like we need to meet to make a recommendation about these facilities rentals, we can always move it earlier.